Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. I want to speak to you about something that often goes overlooked in the age of oversharing, constant connectivity, and social media validation. The title of today's talk is Don't Share Personal Life with Anyone. Now, that may sound harsh or even a bit cold, but let me explain. We live in a world where everyone feels the need to broadcast their lives. What they ate, where they went, who they're dating, their struggles, their wins. Every little detail becomes public property. But here's the truth. Privacy is power, and your personal life, your dreams, your plans, your relationships, your pain deserves protection. Why? Because not everyone who listens to your story is rooting for your success. Some people are simply curious, others are judgmental, and a few, unfortunately, are quietly hoping you fail. The more you expose, the more vulnerable you become, not just to criticism, but to manipulation, gossip, and even sabotage. Your relationships grow stronger in silence. Your goals become clearer in solitude, and your healing becomes real when it's private. When you overshare, you allow outside voices to influence your decisions, to add pressure where it doesn't belong, and to dilute the sacred process of becoming who you truly are. Privacy is power. In a world where people share every detail of their lives online and in conversation, it might seem counterintuitive to stay quiet, to hold back. But there is a quiet strength in keeping parts of your life reserved, untouched by the eyes and opinions of others. When you protect your personal life, you protect your energy, your peace, and your ability to think clearly without outside noise clouding your judgment. There's a certain clarity that comes with privacy. When you're not constantly explaining yourself, defending your decisions, or seeking approval, you begin to trust your own voice more. You stop worrying about what others might think or say, and you begin focusing solely on what matters to you. This is where real strength is born. When your actions are guided not by the spotlight of attention, but by the quiet confidence within. In moments of vulnerability, when you're healing, growing, or trying to figure life out, privacy becomes a sanctuary. Sharing too soon or with the wrong people can invite opinions that hurt more than help. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Some will misunderstand it, others will misuse it. But when you keep it private, you give yourself room to process things at your own pace. You stay in control of the narrative instead of letting someone else write it for you. Privacy also preserves authenticity. When you don't feel the need to perform for others or present a polished version of your life, you get to be real with yourself and the few people you trust. That authenticity is grounding. You're no longer chasing impressions or living for applause. You're simply living intentionally and with integrity. Another form of power that comes from privacy is strategic advantage. When people don't know your next move, they can't stop it. When your plans remain quiet, they have space to mature. Dreams that are kept in silence often flourish better than those exposed too early to the pressure of opinions and expectations. Quiet success is sometimes the most genuine kind, uncontaminated by comparison or competition. Privacy also protects relationships. The more you talk about your private life, especially your romantic or family relationships, the more you open the door to judgment, jealousy, or misunderstanding. Not everyone who smiles at your happiness is happy for you. By keeping your connections sacred and shielded, you create a space where they can grow naturally, away from outside influence and unnecessary commentary. In a digital world, privacy is also becoming rare. Social media thrives on exposure, but too much exposure can cost you peace, focus, and even safety. The more people know, the more they feel entitled to comment or interfere. The moment you start keeping certain things to yourself, you regain control over your story. You begin to live life on your own terms, not through the lens of public opinion. Privacy is not secrecy. It's not about hiding things out of shame or fear. It's about discernment. It's about knowing that some things are too valuable to be shared casually. It's about understanding that your life is not a performance, and your struggles are not for entertainment. They are sacred. And the more you honor them in silence, the more powerful you become. Not everyone has good intentions. This is a truth that can be difficult to accept, especially for those with kind hearts and open spirits. We often want to believe that others see the world the way we do, that people will celebrate our successes, support our goals, and protect our vulnerabilities. But life teaches us otherwise. Some people do not listen to understand. They listen to judge, to compete, or to use what you say for their own benefit. There are individuals who appear interested in your life, but their curiosity is not rooted in care. It's rooted in comparison, envy, or control. They ask questions not to support you, but to gather information. They offer advice not to help, but to subtly undermine. These are the people who smile in your presence, but silently criticize you in your absence. And the danger lies in mistaking their attention for loyalty. When you share your personal life too freely, you expose yourself to unnecessary risk. You give people insight into your dreams, your weaknesses, your relationships, things that should be guarded. Unfortunately, some people take that information and use it against you. They might spread gossip, plant seeds of doubt, or even mimic your goals out of competition, not inspiration. This is why discernment is so important. You must learn to separate those who are truly with you from those who are merely around you. The presence of someone in your life does not guarantee their loyalty. Time doesn't always equal trust. Some people stay close just to keep tabs on you, not to walk alongside you. They thrive on knowing what's going on in your life, but offer nothing of value in return. They're silent when you struggle and distant when you succeed. And if you're not careful, you'll keep feeding them access to your world while they quietly chip away at your peace. Having good intentions yourself doesn't protect you from those who don't. You might be the type to cheer for others, to keep their secrets safe, and to support them without condition. That's admirable. But not everyone is built like that. Some are driven by insecurity, jealousy, or ego. They don't want you to grow unless they're ahead. They don't want to see you happy unless they're happier. That kind of energy, when allowed too close, can become toxic. This is why boundaries are vital. You don't owe anyone your full story. You don't need to explain every move you make. When you feel pressure to justify your choices, it's often a sign that the person asking doesn't have your best interests at heart. Protect your space. Protect your energy. And most importantly, protect your silence. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It gives you time to observe, to reflect, and to decide who truly deserves to be part of your journey. Real friends, true supporters, they don't need to know every detail to stand by you. They respect your privacy. They're happy for you without needing all the specifics. They celebrate your growth without needing a front row seat. These are the people you keep close. The rest, you keep at a distance, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Not everyone who calls you friend is for you. Not everyone who asks how you are truly care. And not everyone who claps when you win is sincere. So learn to watch, learn to listen, and most importantly, learn to trust actions more than words. In a world full of voices, discernment is your shield. And when you stop giving everyone access, you start gaining control over your own peace, power, and purpose. Selective sharing is wise. In a world that encourages constant openness, where people are urged to be real and share everything, there's something powerful about choosing what to say, when to say it, and who to say it to. Wisdom isn't just about knowing what to say, it's about knowing what not to say and to whom. You don't need to reveal every chapter of your story to every person who walks into your life. Some people are only meant to read the summary, not the entire book. Not everyone is equipped to handle your truth. Some people, even with good intentions, may not have the emotional maturity, the understanding, or the loyalty to respect your vulnerabilities. When you share deeply with someone who hasn't earned your trust, you take a risk, because not every ear is a safe place for your words. Some will hear your pain and turn it into gossip. Others will take your dreams and use them to feed their own insecurities or ambitions. That's why being selective is not being secretive, it's being smart. Trust is not something you give away freely. It's something that should be built slowly through time, consistency, and proven loyalty. When you share too quickly or too often, you can find yourself feeling exposed, misunderstood, or even betrayed. But when you pause, when you reflect before opening up, you give yourself the space to discern who truly deserves to see the private corners of your life. Being selective with what you share also protects your peace. Not everything needs an audience. Sometimes your progress, your plans, your healing, and even your happiness are best nurtured in silence. When you keep things private, you shield them from unnecessary opinions, pressures, and expectations. You give yourself the freedom to grow without interference. You give your life room to breathe. It's also important to recognize that oversharing can create emotional clutter. The more you speak about certain things, the more you invite reactions, suggestions, and judgments. This can cloud your judgment and drown out your own inner voice. By keeping certain matters to yourself or reserving them for a trusted few, you maintain clarity and focus. Your mind stays clearer when it's not constantly processing the opinions of others. Selective sharing also teaches emotional boundaries. It reminds you that you are not obligated to explain your choices, justify your feelings, or relive your pain for others' curiosity. You have a right to privacy, you have a right to process things on your own terms, and you have a right to protect the sacred parts of your life from being misunderstood or misused. When you are wise with your words and intentional with your trust, you begin to create safer, more meaningful relationships. Those you do choose to share with will feel honored, not used. Your vulnerability will carry weight because it wasn't given away lightly. And in turn, you'll find greater comfort in knowing that your personal life isn't being passed around in careless conversations. Selective sharing doesn't mean you're cold or distant. It means you value your story too much to hand it to just anyone. It means you've learned that not every moment is for public display. Some things are more powerful when they remain personal. And some people, only a few, are worthy of hearing the quiet truths behind your smile. In a world that rewards exposure, choose discretion. In a culture that pushes for constant updates, choose silence when needed. And in relationships that feel unbalanced, choose boundaries. Because in the end, those who truly care for you will never need all the details to stand by your side. Oversharing weakens focus. At first, it may seem harmless, even natural, to talk about everything that's going on in your life. You might feel the urge to express your struggles, announce your goals, or share every step of your journey. After all, communication is important, and vulnerability is often praised. But there's a fine line between being open and being overexposed. When you constantly share your personal life with others, especially the wrong people, you start to drain your own mental and emotional energy. You give away the fuel you need to move forward. Every time you speak about what you're planning to do, what you're going through, or what you're hoping for, you create a kind of emotional transaction. You're opening the door to feedback, reactions, expectations, and often unsolicited advice. And all of that input doesn't come free. It demands your attention, it shifts your perspective, and it can pull you away from the clarity you once had. The more you explain yourself to others, the more scattered your inner world becomes. Oversharing often leads to overthinking. Once your thoughts are out in the open, they're no longer just yours. They're being processed through the filters of other people's opinions. Even if those opinions aren't harsh, they still affect how you perceive your own path. You may start second-guessing your decisions, not because you lack confidence, but because too many voices are in your head. That kind of mental noise can be paralyzing. Focus requires silence. It requires solitude. It requires protecting your mental space like it's sacred. Because it is. When you're constantly speaking about your intentions or emotions, you lose the sharp edge of discipline. You become more reactive than reflective, more consumed with how others interpret your life than with living it deliberately. Oversharing distracts you from your priorities. You start to perform for an audience instead of showing up for your purpose. Another issue with oversharing is that it can trick your brain into feeling a false sense of progress. Talking about a goal, for example, can give you a brief emotional high, almost as if you've already achieved it. You feel seen, validated, even praised. But that feeling fades quickly, and what you're left with is a goal that hasn't moved forward because you spent more time discussing it than actually working on it. Words should follow action, not replace it. There's also a danger in becoming emotionally dependent on others' responses. When you overshare, you may begin to rely on the reactions of others to guide how you feel about yourself and your situation. If they're supportive, you feel encouraged. If they're indifferent or critical, you feel deflated. That emotional roller coaster takes you away from your core. It makes your inner peace contingent on outer approval, which is never stable. When you keep your plans and struggles more private, you give yourself the gift of focus. You stay grounded in what you're doing, not distracted by how it looks or how it's received. You make room for deep work, for honest reflection, and for uninterrupted growth. You move in silence, not because you're hiding, but because you're building. And when you're ready to speak, your results will speak louder than any explanation ever could. Oversharing may feel like connection, but often it's a leak in your energy. It's a way of spreading yourself too thin, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. When you start to recognize the cost, you realize that focus is not just about discipline, it's about protecting your space, your vision, and your voice. Some things are too important to dilute with too many conversations. Keep them close, keep them sacred, and let your life speak through action, not overexposure. True growth happens in silence. It doesn't demand attention, applause, or validation. It doesn't scream for recognition or require a spotlight. Real transformation unfolds quietly, often in moments of solitude, discomfort, and deep reflection. In the silence, when the noise of the world fades away, you begin to hear yourself clearly, and in that stillness, real change begins. Growth isn't always visible. It doesn't always come with dramatic announcements or major events. Sometimes it looks like choosing patience instead of reacting in anger. Sometimes it's letting go of someone who no longer serves your peace. It's the quiet decision to wake up early, to stay consistent, to heal, to pray, to reflect, or to forgive. These moments may seem small, but they are the building blocks of something much greater, and they rarely need to be shared or explained. The most powerful changes often occur when no one is watching. When you're alone with your thoughts, away from distractions, and not performing for anyone, you face your truest self. You begin to see your patterns, confront your fears, and take accountability for your choices. This process is not glamorous. It's humbling. It's the kind of work that doesn't get likes or followers, but it builds a foundation that nothing can shake. In silence, you develop discipline. You learn to move without needing applause. You begin to understand that not everything sacred should be broadcast. Social media, society, and even well-meaning people might pressure you to constantly update the world on your progress. But when you resist that urge and keep certain things to yourself, you protect the purity of your growth. You don't give the world the power to shape your direction. Silence also teaches you patience. In a culture obsessed with instant results, personal growth takes time, and time requires stillness. There's no shortcut to wisdom, no fast track to emotional maturity. True healing doesn't happen overnight. It happens in seasons of waiting, of letting go, of choosing not to rush what needs time to unfold. And in those seasons, silence becomes your teacher. It reminds you to trust the process even when there's no visible progress. Being silent doesn't mean you're doing nothing. It means you're focused. It means you're working inwardly before showing anything outwardly. Like roots growing beneath the surface of the earth, your growth is deepening, strengthening, preparing you for the next season of your life. When people finally see the fruit, they may think it happened suddenly, but you'll know it happened in silence. There's also a sacredness to growing in private. When you're not distracted by opinions or comparisons, you stay connected to your own values. You make decisions that align with your truth, not what looks impressive to others. You learn to validate your own progress without needing external confirmation. That kind of independence is powerful. It means your self-worth is no longer dependent on someone else's recognition. The truth is, some of your greatest breakthroughs will happen behind closed doors. No cameras, no applause, just you and your inner work. And that's exactly how it should be. Because when you emerge from that silence, you don't come out needing validation. You come out with confidence, peace, and strength that no one can take away from you. So if you're in a season of quiet, don't mistake it for a lack of progress. Don't feel pressured to share every step. Some of your most important growth is happening now, unseen and unheard. And one day, when the time is right, that silence will speak louder than any words ever could. External opinions can distort your path. What begins as a clear, deeply personal vision can quickly become confused and diluted when too many voices are invited into the conversation. Everyone has something to say about what you should do, who you should be, how fast you should move. And if you're not grounded, those voices can pull you in directions that were never meant for you. The most dangerous detours often don't come from failure. They come from listening to the wrong people. At first, it may seem helpful. You share your goals, your ideas, your dreams, and people respond. Some are supportive, others skeptical. Some offer genuine advice, others speak from their own fears or limitations. Over time, all of that feedback, especially when it's unfiltered, can start to plant doubt. You begin to question your instincts, second guess your decisions, and reshape your plans to fit someone else's comfort zone. And just like that, your path starts to shift, not because you changed, but because you allowed their noise to override your clarity. External opinions aren't always malicious. Sometimes they come from people who truly care, but even those closest to you don't always understand your purpose. They haven't lived your life. They don't carry your passions, your vision, or your sense of calling. What makes sense to them may not be right for you. If you constantly adjust your direction based on what others think, you risk becoming a version of yourself built from fragments of their expectations rather than your own truth. It takes strength to stay rooted in your purpose when others don't see the full picture. It takes courage to walk a path that others question, especially when it doesn't look like the norm. But that's the essence of growth, learning to trust your inner compass, even when the world around you is pointing in another direction. You weren't meant to live according to everyone else's map. You were meant to carve your own. When you rely too much on external validation, your sense of self becomes fragile. Every bit of praise lifts you up, and every bit of criticism pulls you down. You start living reactively instead of intentionally. You stop asking yourself what you want and start asking what others will think. That kind of life feels heavy because it's not truly yours. This is why silence, solitude, and reflection are essential. They create space for you to reconnect with your why, your original reason for doing what you're doing. When you block out the noise and tune back into your own voice, you remember what matters. You remember that you don't need everyone to understand you, only the right people. And most importantly, you remember that your path is valid even if no one claps for it right away. The truth is, no one else has to live with your choices but you. The people offering their opinions won't carry the weight of your regrets or the joy of your breakthroughs. You will. So it's up to you to choose whose voice matters. And often, the one you need to hear most is your own. External opinions are inevitable, but their power is optional. You decide how much influence they have. When you develop the discipline to stay aligned with your own values, you walk more freely, you move with purpose, and you stop chasing approval because you've already approved your own direction. Your path is yours for a reason. Guard it, trust it, and walk it boldly, even when others don't understand. Sacred things deserve protection. In a world where everything is shared, displayed, and exposed, it's easy to forget that some things are meant to be kept close to the heart. Not because we are hiding them, but because they hold deep meaning. What is sacred is not meant for public consumption. It's not for validation, likes, or approval. It's for us quietly, privately, and reverently. The more sacred something is, the more it requires boundaries. And those boundaries are not walls of fear, but shields of respect. Your dreams are sacred. They were planted in your soul for a reason. Before they bloom into something visible, they exist in a delicate stage, one that is easily damaged by premature exposure. When you speak too soon or too often about your dreams, you open the door for doubt, distraction, or even discouragement from others. People may not understand your vision. They may project their own fears onto it. They may unintentionally or intentionally strip the excitement and purity from what you're trying to create. That's why protecting your dream in its early stages isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your healing is sacred too. The process of becoming whole again, of shedding old pain and rebuilding inner strength is personal. Not everyone is qualified to witness that journey. Healing takes time, silence, and privacy. When you rush to share every step of your pain or every small win in your healing, you make yourself vulnerable to misunderstanding. Some people listen to respond, not to understand. And when you let the wrong people into your sacred space, it can set you back emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Even your relationships are sacred. Whether it's love, friendship, or family, not every detail needs to be shared with the world. True connection thrives in privacy. When you constantly expose your relationship dynamics to outsiders, you invite their energy, opinions, and judgments into something that should be protected. Sacred love grows in safe, quiet spaces where trust is built, not broadcast. Faith, too, is sacred. Your connection to something greater, your beliefs, your inner convictions, these are not up for debate. When you constantly try to explain or defend your faith to others who don't share your journey, you may feel drained or even doubtful. Faith isn't always logical. It's not meant to be proven. It's meant to be lived. And sometimes the most powerful faith is the kind that doesn't need to be spoken about, only lived through quiet conviction. To protect the sacred is not to hide in fear. It's to honor what matters. It's to recognize that the most valuable parts of life aren't always the most visible. They don't need to be validated to be real. They don't need to be shared to be meaningful. You know what they mean to you, and that's enough. We live in a culture that confuses visibility with value, but the truth is the things that shape us most deeply often happen in silence and privacy. Not every story is meant to be told. Not every experience is meant to be posted. Some moments are too holy to be put into words, some feelings too deep for explanation. And that's okay. That's how you know they're sacred. So protect your peace. Guard your growth. Defend your joy. Keep what's sacred close, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Not everyone deserves access to every part of you. And the more you understand that, the more power you reclaim